Midsommar is not for the faint of heart. Even though I genuinely love this movie and feel like everyone should see it, I do recognize that a lot of people won't like it. Also, while I won't say you need to have experience with psychedelics to understand the movie, having it certainly won't hurt. Quick disclaimer, I am referring to past experience. I would not recommend watching this movie under the influence. With that said, when you do watch this movie or rewatch it, don't watch it strictly through the lens of reality. You really need a healthy sprinkling of esotericism to appreciate and understand everything you're seeing. The opening tapestry is basically a sort of storyboard of the movie, really driving home the point that these are characters within a story that is being told, versus people actively living out their lives. They're victims of self-fulfilling prophecies, a theme also explored in Hereditary, another film written and directed by Ari Aster. Couple this with the cheery music in the background that's invoking this sense of whimsy, reminiscent of the music we would typically associate with a fairy tale. Also, notice that the first panel of the tapestry shows the deaths of Dany's family within a snow setting, the ice representing frigidness and isolation, both physical and emotional, but is also associated with feminine energy, bringing to mind a certain Disney princess movie, but that's a topic for another day. This opening scene of whimsy transitions to scenes of real snow, now with a more somber a cappella song playing. This juxtaposition works to create this sense of surreal bewilderment, right? You know, why do I hear harps and high notes? I thought this was a horror film. This aura is, of course, helping to set the tone for the literally trippy moments to come. To me, the somber singing invokes a feeling of serious melancholy, a feeling I've only felt when I was dealing with extreme depression and homesickness. Even though I can't understand the words, the tone is long and deep, and the sadness is only deepened when I look at the visuals of the frozen landscape devoid of any life. I definitely feel like the homesickness is a result of intentional implication versus a random coinkydink, because number one, this is an Ari Aster film. As a rule of thumb, there are no coincidences, and two, it makes sense in the context of the messages of the film. Of course, we can recognize the themes of community, family, and grief, but I feel like this film is also having a more personal conversation on the way heartbreak can cause you to lose yourself. Our heroine had to go on a personal journey to a foreign land that ironically ended up being and becoming her home. The Hargan clothes are the only clothes that fit Dany properly, and she is able to speak fluent Swedish out of nowhere, as if it's just in her blood. On top of that, later on when we see Dany crowned as the May Queen, we can see her parents in the crowd. We can even hear Maya singing the same song when the group is in Harga, a reference to, obviously, the opening scene, and a hint that Dany is finding her way home, in addition to finding herself. Next, we get an immediate jarring cut via a ringing telephone with shots of a suburban skyline, demonstrating a community and people being home in general. Then we get the shot of a lone house with the windows dark, contrasting the lit neighborhoods. Our first introduction to the main character is indirectly via a voicemail. She needs help and is reaching out, but the call is unanswered. When we finally get to actually see our protagonist, it is again indirect since she initially has her back turned. We see Dany's call log in her phone and see that every single attempt to connect with someone was unsuccessful. demonstrating her actual isolation. And now we see her first interaction with her boyfriend Christian. Her voice is cheery, yet she has tears in her eyes and no smile on her face, giving us a visual of her cognitive dissonance in pretending everything is okay. She asks if they were still hanging out later, and he asks her if they talked about doing something. Y'all peep the gaslighting? Why would she ask if you are still hanging out if the two of you hadn't already talked about hanging out prior? He proceeds to ask her about her sister situation after, mind you, a deep sigh / awkward silence. Right before she answers, she wipes her teary eyes, basically bottling up her emotions, and when she answers him, her voice starts strong, but quickly quiets down, signifying that the strong faith she's showing isn't as strong as she would have us believe. Dany is very obviously not okay. When she shows this vulnerability, her concerns are immediately waved away, with Christian retorting, "I'm sure it's fine." And then what does he proceed to do? He chastises her and then blames her for her sister's erratic behavior. In certain circumstances, he could be right, but we see just how wrong he is when Dany responds that she doesn't, quote, let her sister do anything. She is literally uncontrollable due to her, A, being a person with her own agency, but more specifically because B, she has bipolar personality disorder. Christian's gaslighting, dismissive nature is shown again when Dany brings up the fact that Christian himself had said the email seemed different. She brushes away this discomfort though, convinces herself he's right, and then thanks him and the universe for his presence in her life. They exchange I love yous, but it comes across as stale and disingenuous. The next scene shows Dany on the phone, this time with an unknown woman, this conversation being the most we get in her character development. There's something up with Christian. She doesn't know what it is, but Dany can just tell something is wrong. You could say she has a gut feeling. This time, when her concerns are being voiced, her feelings are reaffirmed and validated by the voice on the line. There is a dynamic, natural flow to the conversation, with the voice acknowledging every statement and actively engaging Dany. Every irrational, insecure thought Dany expresses is met with a retort from the kind but very stern voice on the phone. These feelings are dismissed not in an uncaring way, but more akin to your parent reassuring you there is no boogie monster in the closet or under your bed. This brief display of sisterhood is interrupted when the ominous music comes in as she gets a call from an unknown person. Dany's gut feeling is confirmed, albeit unbeknownst to her, when we meet Christian and his friends and find out that Christian is not and has not been emotionally invested in their relationship for at least a year. Let's rewind real quick to the previous shot of Dany and make a note that this shot of Dany is in a mirror, a motif that will be recurring in the movie. So we have an image of Dany having a conversation with a nameless, faceless, feminine voice in a mirror, being told she needs to confront her relationship issues head-on, as well as a real-life confirmation, for us at least, that she's not paranoid and there are legitimate issues to be confronted. Remember when I said this movie is about the importance of women's intuition?
My mind, it amazes me sometimes.
Next, we establish Dany's tragic backstory and reaffirm her isolation. Her entire family has been wiped out via a murder-suicide thanks to her sister. Or at least it appears that way. I'm kind of more under the impression that they were all murdered by the cult because that would support the theme that this story is more of a self-fulfilling prophecy. These aren't just random coincidences, these were intentional, and there are more omniscient forces at work bringing about fateful consequences. At face value, these forces appear sinister, but, and this is me playing devil's advocate, we don't actually know anything about Dany's family's morals. People who end up attracted to narcissists usually, if not always, are conditioned to subconsciously seek out those relationships due to a family history with narcissists. For all we know, one or all of her family members were also narcs, so the cult could have actually been doing her a favor. But I digress. We don't have any proof, so this is just a theory. Christian approaches her apartment and looks more hesitant and scared than genuinely concerned about Dany's well-being. To me, he looks like a child with stage fright, being pushed on by his overeager parents. He has no actual desire to do the thing he's doing. When we see him holding Dany in the next scene, and then see that he stayed with her for yet another 3 months, it becomes clear that Christian is holding on to this relationship in an effort to save face. He doesn't want to seem like the bad guy abandoning Dany when she needed him most, despite the fact that he already checked out of their relationship over a year ago. Make it make sense. Christian opens the door to check on her, but we see that he is dressed and about to go to a party. Notice how his smile slips off his face as soon as she says she'll join him. He passively aggressively asks her if she got enough sleep in an effort to Jedi mind trick her into staying home. It doesn't work, and we then find our protagonist at a party surrounded by unfamiliar faces with a boyfriend who doesn't care for her, as well as his friends who also don't care for her, with the exception of one, but more on that later. Dany learns for the first time that her boyfriend will be taking a trip to Sweden right around the time of her birthday, which means that he would be leaving the supposed love of his life to celebrate her birthday completely alone. Keep in mind, she's now an orphan. Let me interject with another disclaimer for those of you who might still want to defend Christian. It is completely valid and fair for a man to want guy time with his friends. I'm aware that there are clingy women who have the toxic mindset that men can't hang with their boys. And that's all fine, but it isn't relevant to this conversation. Christian is deliberately and willfully misleading Dany for his sake. Don't stay with someone out of obligation when you have no desire or capability to handle their emotional issues. It's not fair to you, and it certainly isn't fair to them. As Mark said earlier, Christian is not her therapist, and he would have had every right to break up with her, but he didn't. This phony sense of duty card he's pulling looks more like he's putting up with Dany as opposed to caring for her, and that is shitty. It's extremely disingenuous, and it reeks of thinly veiled misogyny and sexism, but I digress. I want to bring the focus on the way the scene is shot. When Dany is confronting Christian about being blindsided, only his reflection is shown, while Dany is within the frame but off-centered. She isn't actually confronting the issues head-on. She's still being indirect. She then does put her foot down, albeit softly, to confront him directly, seen by her moving in front of him, forcing him into frame. However, he continues to gaslight her and then literally switches places with her, notably via her physically moving him, ending the conversation with her apologizing to him and begging him to stay. This is especially symbolic because it shows who holds the power here. Not only is Dany apparently powerless to occult forces within her own story, she's powerless in her relationship. Or at least Dany thinks she's powerless. The next scene shows Dany hanging out with the boys and her first warm human interaction with Pele, the Pied Piper from the tapestry. They make small talk, and although the conversation is a little shallow, Pele is genuine. When he smiles at her, he also smiles with his eyes, not just his teeth. This warmth is underlined by the sun shining in through the window, in contrast to the dark night that we've mostly seen Dany in. His smile is also a very knowing smile, and his eyes are alive and bright, giving the impression that he's privy to a secret, invoking this low-key sense of foreboding. Why is he looking at her like that? What is he up to? Again, we get juxtaposing or mirroring concepts when he expresses his sentiments for her loss and attempts to connect with her by opening up about his own orphanness. On the one hand, he looks genuinely concerned and is apparently the only genuine connection Dany's had in a long time. His gentle prod can be seen as a sign from the universe attempting to get Dany to confront her emotions and, quote, her loss. On the other hand, he is completely inappropriate and guilty of oversharing. There's never been any indication that he and Dany are close, so why in the world is he prodding like this? This bewilderment and alarm manifests in Dany as we see her running away, ending with her sobbing on the verge of a mental breakdown in the airplane bathroom. The group descends into Stockholm, probably making reference to Stockholm Syndrome, and begins the journey to Hälsingland. The way the camera shoots their journey on the road makes it look like they've jumped into a pool and come out on the other side to find themselves in a strange world. Familiar, but different. Their world is symbolically and literally being turned upside down. We can also interpret this as Dany taking a spiritual journey into her subconscious, doing some introspection and self-therapy. Now, I want to diverge a little bit to point out some obvious similarities to Lewis Carroll's iconic Alice in Wonderland series, especially Through the Looking Glass. Carroll's work recounts an adventure where Alice dives down the rabbit hole, and in the other, Alice literally went through a looking glass, aka a mirror. In certain aspects, the pair of books could even be seen as mirrors of each other, but the mirror as a motif is especially key in Through the Looking Glass, hence the title. Within both of the works, we have a vulnerable female protagonist in an alien environment, left to navigate it by herself, as she is honestly the only person she can rely on. Dany is all the way in a different country, surrounded by strangers. Instead of relying on herself, she clings to Christian. When the group decides to take some shrooms after being introduced to Pele's brother and the other couple, Dany is reluctant. She says she needs to find her footing first, but she will only do so if Christian gives her permission.
All right. Yeah, great.
You know what? I might have to find my footing first, if that's okay.
If that's okay. Psychedelics should honestly only be taken when you feel comfortable and ready. It already wasn't a good idea for her to take them just because of the setting and she's still grieving, but when she deliberately went against her better judgment, yet again, and succumbed to peer pressure, pretending that she's fine, I knew she was going to have a bad trip. She ends up running off, and the group doesn't find her until it's a brand new day. They finally arrive at the compound and are greeted with a welcome snack and flutes, the flutes creating an air of surreal whimsy. The festival starts, commemorating the beginning of the end of the elders' lives. Dany then enlightens Pele and the audience that Christian has forgotten her birthday. In this next scene, I want to focus on the other couple, Connie and Simon. These two are a direct contrast to Dany and Christian, serving as an example of what a healthy relationship is and a reflection of everything Dany and Christian are not. We see Connie and Simon standing together as a unit, plus they're literally engaged, while Dany and Christian are opposite and apart from each other. Every touch, gesture, and look between Connie and Simon is genuine and full of love. We can look at these two and see, they're healthy and they're happy. Meanwhile, these two aren't even on the same page about how long they've been together, also emphasizing Christian's disassociation. Simon, unlike Christian, took the initiative to protect his woman at the first sight of danger at the Atastupa. He immediately recognized something wasn't right and made the move to get them both out of there. Later on, when Simon disappears, it's emphasized that Simon would never leave his fiancée pined. But with Christian, on the other hand, all bets are off. On the way to the Rotvalda, which is Swedish for uprooted tree, in this case it is specifically their ancestral tree, Ingemar and friends see another prophetic tapestry, this time depicting a, quote, love spell. And I am using that word very loosely. Meanwhile, everyone else goes to see the summer house, where everyone aged 18 to 36 sleeps. Here, they are surrounded by artwork. The artwork in here mimics the art style of the previous tapestries, as well as their predictive nature. Dany is drawn to the wall of her ancestors, all the previous May Queens, more foreshadowing. Christian pulls her outside so she can blow out a candle, but Dany is distracted by the group of women holding and serenading a baby in the background. Alright, we have reached the end of part 1 of the Midsommar Women's Intuition video analysis series. I wasn't originally planning on doing a video series for this movie, but when I totaled up all the voice recordings, it ended up being at least 60 minutes long, and I just figured that was kind of a lot for a video. But if you guys would be interested in listening to me talk for an hour's length at a time, then I will more than likely try to do at least 1 or 2 of those types for other movies in the future. Anywho, thank you so much for watching until the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!